Imagine driving your truck alone in the dead of night on a deserted highway deep in the woods. The only sounds are the hum of your engine and the occasional rustling of the trees. Suddenly, you see something standing in the middle of the road. Something that shouldn't be there. As you get closer, your hands grow cold, your heart pounds like a drum, and your mind screams, "This is impossible." What would you do if you were in my place? Would you stop? Would you keep driving? But what if I told you that what happened to me that night wasn't just a coincidence? It was the beginning of a nightmare that never ended. Before we begin, don't forget to support us by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, sharing the scariest thing you've ever experienced in the comments below. Now let's begin. My name is Daniel. I've been a truck driver for over 10 years. I've seen a lot of strange things on the road, but nothing like what I experienced that night. It was just another ordinary night when I received a call from my company. There was an urgent delivery that needed to be made, a shipment to a remote area deep in the mountains. The highway leading there was known to be desolate and dangerous, but I had driven through worse, so I didn't think much of it. I loaded my truck and set off. The night was eerily quiet, too quiet. There were no cars, no movement, not even the usual sounds of animals you'd expect in such places. It was as if the world itself had stopped breathing. About an hour into the drive, I was passing by a dense forest when I saw something, or rather, someone, standing by the roadside. It was a man, possibly in his 50s, dressed in outdated clothes, as if he had stepped out of another time. But what struck me the most was his expression, pale, lifeless, his eyes staring blankly into the void. I ignored him and drove past. But when I glanced at my rearview mirror, he was still there, standing in the exact same position, as if he had never moved. A chill ran down my spine. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just my imagination. Minutes later, at a sharp curve in the road, I saw him again. But this time, he was standing directly in the middle of the road, forcing me to slam on the brakes. The tires screeched against the asphalt. My heart pounded in my chest. I jumped out of the truck, ready to confront him. But he was gone. There was no one there. Then came the real horror. When I climbed back into my truck, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There were wet footprints on the passenger seat, right beside me. I was trying to process what was happening when I heard something. A faint knocking sound. It was coming from the back of the truck. At first I thought I was imagining it, but the knocking continued. And then it grew louder and louder. I grabbed my phone and tried to call someone, anyone, but there was no signal. My hands were shaking, my breathing became ragged, and then I looked into the side mirror. He was there. The same man, standing next to my truck, staring at me with a chilling smile. But the worst part, I could see my reflection in the mirror. But there was no reflection of him standing beside me. I slammed my foot on the gas, desperate to escape whatever this thing was. I drove as fast as I could, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. But the more I drove, the more I realized something was wrong. I was seeing the same trees, the same road sign, the same sharp turn. I was stuck in a loop. No matter how far I drove, I kept ending up at the same spot. Then I heard the whisper, "Why didn't you stop for me?" The voice came from behind me, but I was alone. I could feel something sitting directly behind me. I could feel its cold breath on the back of my neck. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move, unable to even turn my head. My only instinct was to start reciting verses from the Quran. My voice trembled at first, but with every verse, the air around me grew heavier, colder. And then, suddenly, the truck jerked violently, the engine sputtered, and the lights went out. I woke up to the sound of honking. I was parked at a gas station, surrounded by several truckers who looked at me with concern. One of them, an elderly man, approached and asked, Did you see him? I stared at him, my mouth dry. See who? I asked, dreading the answer. His face darkened. The hitchhiker, the ghost that haunts that highway. You're lucky you got out. Not everyone does. To this day, I have no idea how I escaped that place, how I ended up at that gas station. But I swear, I will never ever drive that road again. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced something terrifying while traveling at night? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends who love horror. And stay tuned for more stories that will keep you awake at night.